1. Critical Analysis of Logistics Exchange Memorandum of Agreement, LEMOA, signed between India and USA. GS Paper 2, Bilateral, Regional and Global Groupings and Agreements involving India and/or affecting India's interests. What is the context about? India and the US signed an important agreement that will make the two nations logistical allies and enable both the militaries to use each other's assets and bases for repair and replenishment of supplies. These include port visits, joint exercises, joint training, and humanitarian assistance and disaster relief efforts. Other uses are to be discussed on a case-by-case basis. What is LEMOA? Logistics Exchange Memorandum of Agreement, LEMOA, facilitates the provision of logistical support, supplies, and services between the US and Indian militaries on a reimbursable basis, and provides a framework to govern them. It significantly enhances operational capacity of our armed forces, including in response to humanitarian crises or disaster relief. It would help both countries in governing the use of each other's land, air and naval bases for repair and resupply, a step toward building defense ties as they seek to counter the growing maritime assertiveness of China. What does LEMOA cover? LEMOA facilitates support between India and USA, and this may include food, water, billeting, transportation, petroleum, oils, lubricants, clothing, medical services, spare parts and components, repair and maintenance services, training services, and other logistical items and services. How does this agreement work? For example, during a bilateral exercise with the US, the participant country's unit requires fuel for its equipment. The unit cannot make the purchase unless it can pay directly and immediately. A LEMOA agreement allows for the purchase by establishing a value for the purchase and the terms for payment, which could be replacement in kind or an equal value exchange. No bases to be set up in India. The Defense Pact signed by India and the US facilitating logistical support between the two militaries is not an agreement to set up bases, Defense Minister Manohar Parrikar and his US counterpart Ashton Carter have said. There is no provision for any base or any sort of activities to set up a base in India, Parrikar told reporters at a joint news conference with Carter after the two leaders held talks at the Pentagon. Significance of the agreement. The agreement approves the two militaries to share each other's base for various operations including joint exercise, joint training, humanitarian assistance and disaster relief efforts. The agreement is there to help India in rescue operations in conflict zones. It will help to save the life of Indians, build the trust between citizen and nation. The pact will enhance India's military capability, and now we can have access to America's network of military bases having strategic locations. LEMOA will enhance maritime cooperation in Asia-Pacific region, also an assistance to India to be Blue Water Navy and its important role in Indian Ocean. US too can have better patrolling in South China, a check after China rejected the UNCLOS judgment. Also, it would strengthen India's role against China hegemony and its deterrent policies, also enhance surveillance against terrorism and piracy in Indian Ocean. Is this the end of India's foreign policy? For years India has remained non-aligned and autonomous. It has an international reputation of not taking sides, a reputation which has allowed it to pursue many alliances and partnerships in trade and commerce. With India signing LSA, countries could view India as a part of US military bloc. This could have a devastating effect on the Indian foreign relations. Russia has been the closest military ally since independence. Most of Indian military hardware is Russian and is going to be so at least for the next decade and a half. India is pursuing a strategic partnership with the Arab League and many of its countries do not have positive relations with US. India proposed to invest $20 billion in Iran and develop its Gwadar port to corner Pakistan in the area. Myanmar and US have historically tense relations, and with India is aggressively pursuing good relations with Myanmar to tackle the influence of China. India is one of the few countries having a diplomatic mission in North Korea, which has extremely tense relations with US. Many countries with Indian diaspora like Fiji have tense relations with US. What should India do? New Delhi should learn from the way other US allies and proto-allies have dealt with Washington. Countries like Turkey, Pakistan, and even China have gained a great deal of political and strategic support or military aid by lining up with the US. But at the end of the day they have played their own game. The trick, as discerning readers will detect, is not to be carried away by the rhetoric, and to relentlessly pursue the national interest, provided you have a clear idea of what the national interest is. The way forward. Providing enormous benefits as well, the agreement compromised the non-aligned stance of India and will change the world's perception about India. LMOA could be unfavorable for China-India cooperation, as US will use Indian bases. It has potential to increase regional conflict. Also, India should not compromise its sovereignty and should not allow US bases which might be used to wage war with other countries or interfere in internal affairs of these countries. A balancing act is needed on part of India, and LMOA should not negate the work done in respect to China.